One of the many things I enjoy making in my shop is chessboards, and over the last few years this led me to want to make my own chess pieces. And that's one of the main reasons why I upgraded my CNC machine with a Rotary Axis, so that I could cut out detailed chess pieces to go along with my boards. Now, I quickly discovered that not all 3D models are created equal. I tried downloading some free models from some of the 3D printing sites and even bought a couple off of Etsy, but I quickly discovered that the quality leaves a lot to be desired. And that's when I discovered the 3D model store. They have thousands of quality 3D models that you can cut on your CNC or print on your 3D printer. And I'm telling you, folks, the quality is second to none. And they also provide a service where they can custom make 3D models at your request. So please check them out. Full disclaimer, I approached them. They did not approach me, and they have offered to sponsor this video. So please check them out. You will not be disappointed. And the models that I'm cutting here were purchased from 3D Model Store. And if you're interested, there's a link to their website in the description of this video. Okay, so now I found a decent 3D model to cut. Now I've discovered what other headaches I'm going to run into trying to get this done, and sadly, the main headache throughout all this was me, because I not only have OCD, I have CDO. And if the part's not perfect, I'm just going to scrap it and start over. Maybe a little detail wasn't right, a setting needed to be changed in the tool path. And this led me to cutting a lot of models out that ended up in a scrap pile. But I eventually got it pretty close to perfect, at least enough where I thought I'd share with you guys. So sit back and relax and enjoy my journey. One lesson that I've learned is that cutting a 3D model out in a rotary operation is a lot different than your standard 3D finishing tool path in Vectric. First and foremost, it's important to understand that even though it's named a 3D finishing toolpath, it's not really a three-dimensional cut. The way Vectric handles a rotary toolpath is it will take the 3D model and unwrap it and make it flat. This isn't a true X, Y, Z plus rotary toolpath. It's simply an X, Z rotary toolpath. So in this situation, the way I have mine set up is that the Y-axis remains static. It stays in a set position the whole time. The rotary will spin 360 degrees, and the X-axis will move down the model, cutting out what it needs to cut. Well, this presents a limitation, because if you have particular details of a model that don't fall in the center line of that axis, then you'll get what's called an undercut, and Vectric won't cut them at all. So I had to figure out some ways to overcome this and maintain the details of the models. Now, I didn't have that problem with all the models, like what you're seeing here, the kings being cut out, and all the details fell within the center line of the X-axis, and they all cut out properly. Now, when I discovered this limitation in Vectric, I set out to see if there was some other software that I could purchase that would give me true XYZA capability. And they're out there, but they're mostly industrial grade, and you're going to pay thousands of dollars for them, and it's just not worth it to me unless I was mass producing these models. There is other options. There's Fusion 360, but even there, their machinist part that would be capable of this behind the paywall, and it's fairly expensive. I did find a software called DEFT Proto. It's a 3D CNC software that offers a capability of a four-sided cut. So what you would do is load the model, cut one side, spin it 90 degrees, cut it, spin it 90 degrees, cut it, and so on. But from just downloading the trial version, it seems like that type of operation, it took 2 to 3 times longer to cut the model out. So I was trying to develop a way of cutting the model out in a decent amount of time without sacrificing any quality. So I abandoned DEFT Proto and just stuck with Vectric. But I figured out some ways to get around that in Vectric, and I'll show you that here in just a second. Now here's a prime example of what I'm talking about in this detail of the bishop, because most of this cut doesn't fall in the center line of the x-axis. It's only going to cut what it can reach or what it can see. And you'll notice there in the center there's some wood left over. So what I did is I created 2 more separate tool paths in Vectric, and they're just basically standard 3D carves. And I just cut out one side at a time. And when that was done, I would flip it 180 degrees and cut out the other side. And it wasn't the most elegant solution because it created a few errors that I had to sand out later, but it was better than the alternative and the model not being accurate. Of all the chess models, the knight was the most challenging because it was the most detailed chess piece of all of them. This particular set that I bought it because of how detailed the knight was, and I probably practiced on this piece more than any other. I probably ended up cutting 8 to 10 examples out, test pieces, before I figured out a way to get good quality detail and it not take half a day to cut it. This took the longest time to cut. And here's another example of the additional 2 tool paths that I cut out to cut out the underneath of the chin there. Otherwise, that would have been an undercut that the normal rotary operation couldn't have touched. And it required some elbow grease after the fact, but it wasn't too bad. came across a different challenge with the rook because it had an undercut, obviously, but it wasn't the same as the other pieces where the undercuts were on the side. This was actually on the top because the center of the tower there couldn't be cut out because it was along the center line of the rotary. So what I did was just secured the piece down flat onto the wasteboard and just run a standard pocket tool path to cut out the center of the tower to make it accurate. And of all the chess pieces, this guy was the simplest one to cut out, the most straightforward and the quickest. It only took about 10 minutes to cut him out. The only thing was just the repetition of cutting out 16 separate pieces. Another challenge that I faced was trying to figure out a way to sand these things. If I wanted them to look nice, to be luxury chess pieces, then the finish needed to be perfect. So it wasn't difficult, it was just tedious. So a little redneck ingenuity here, trying to get them sanded. And I actually started with 220 because I learned pretty quick that using a coarser grit sandpaper, if you wasn't careful, you could start cutting into the details. So it took a little longer, but it was just a safer method of making sure that I got a decent sanding done without compromising or damaging any of the chess pieces. And this wasn't a first sanding. I'll sand them many times afterwards just to make sure I get a good finish on them for when I seal them. I wanted the chess pieces to be tournament quality. So they measure to the specs. I got it off the World Chess Organization website. And the king is 3 3/4 inches tall, and the other pieces match that ratio. But I also wanted them to be weighted. With an idea to cut a pocket in the bottom of the chess piece and fill it with BBs and epoxy. So I created this jig to hold the chess pieces down so I could cut a pocket out in the bottom of the base. Now, even though the website has specific specs on the height and the size, it didn't on the weight. So I just kind of shot from the hip here and I cut a deep enough pocket into the base that I thought it wouldn't mess up the model, and just added as many BBs as the pocket would hold. And so I come up, I guess, about 50% heavier. And it feels pretty nice. They're fairly heavy, believe it or not. You could knock out a possum with it if you hit him in the head with it. This was my method for finish sanding the chess pieces. I had these Dremel bits with emery cloth on them, so I put them in my drill press and just run them over by hand, getting areas I could get, and it smoothed them out really nice. It didn't cut into the details, but it finished the surface really, really nice. Another thing I did is I tried several different finishes, from Rubios to just oil, and I settled on just simply spraying them with lacquer. It created a really nice smooth finish, and I knew it would be durable over time as well. This had 4 to 5 coats per piece, and I would lightly sand it between each coat to get a nice finish on it. I bought some felt cloth with a sticky backing on it from Amazon, and they weren't the right size. So I went over to my friend Mike's house. You remember the bald guy from previous videos. He let me use his laser to cut the pieces down to proper size so they'd be a custom fit on the base of each chess piece. So there you have it. My first luxury chess set. I'm really, really proud how they turned out. They turned out really nice. I learned a ton, and if I do these again, and I will, they'll be even better. Y'all stick around, because my next video I'm going to make a custom storage box for the chess pieces, as well as a chess board for them to play on. So, as always, thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Take care.